Welcome to today's fantastic Marketing Profs webinar. I'm your boy, George B. Thomas, speaker, trainer, catalyst for growth, and I'll be your moderator for today's educational event. Now, I'd like to take a minute to thank Celtra for sponsoring today's broadcast. Celtra is helping the world's leading brands transform creative by automating digital production. Say hello to modular creative production and goodbye to manual and siloed processes. Celtra lets you streamline workflows, automate creative production, and scale up campaign activation at speed. Now, that sounds amazing. All right, folks, I'm excited to introduce Melody Lamb and Jackie Simmons. Melody is product manager at Celtra, specializing on enterprise workflow features and creative automation. Jackie is a lead solutions consultant at Celtra. She's an expert in building relationships and leveraging product expertise in creative automation by driving value for customers. All right, attendees, you're here for Upgrade Your Content and Creative Production, how to streamline workflows and automate production. Melody and Jackie, are you both ready to rock and roll?
Let's do it.
Let's do it.
So hi, everyone. Today, welcome to our webinar. We'll be talking about how creative automation can transform a future-proof your marketing team's workflow. Before we start, we'll do a quick round of introductions. So I'm Melody, a product manager here at Celtra, specializing in enterprise workflow solutions.
And once again, I'm Jackie. I'm a solutions consultant here at Celtra, specializing in the onboarding, enablement, and long-term success of our enterprise brand customers who have a variety of different organizational structures.
Yes, and Celtra is an industry leader in the creative automation space with over 50 global and national brands adopting our creative automation solutions to enhance their brand marketing efforts. And for today, we'll be splitting up our webinar into 3 sections. We'll have some icebreaker questions to start and understand where you stand now. And then we'll have a quick intro on our technology and what creative automation is all about. Then we'll dive deeper into some of our successful client setups and share some takeaways from there. So where do you actually stand now, right? For global and regional brands, we have some questions for yourself to answer right here. Let's say, are you running campaigns in markets that look very similar to each other with only minor differences? Are you also having different teams who define their campaign concepts versus production? Do you have separate teams solely responsible for making creatives for only a specific audience, let's say for a specific market? And to our national brands, do you have similar looking campaigns for different product and offerings within your brand? Or have one central team concepting and producing creatives? And do you also now require the same level of effort for new campaigns as well as for quick refreshes? If your answer is yes to any of the above, you are not alone. Based on the research we've conducted with Forrester, we've seen that only 44% of marketers believe that there are effective creative processes in place for creating digital ad content. And 80% of them believe that their digital advertising strategy could benefit from some form of improved creative automation technology. So you might be wondering, where do I even begin to build more effective processes right here?
And thankfully, we have an answer for you today, creative automation. So today we're going to be talking about how can you just start thinking about incorporating creative automation into your current process. But let's first talk about what creative automation even really is. At a high level, creative automation is technology used to streamline the creative production process via cross-team efficiencies. And it can be applied to all the various stages of your production process or current workflow. To get started, one needs to understand the creative automation mindset. This mindset is important to successfully adopt the technology that powers the automation itself. This mindset involves creative and marketing teams coming together to understand how can they proactively collaborate at the start of that production process in order to maximize efficiencies and minimize time wasted potentially later on any additional alignment that doesn't necessarily need to happen in the process. When thinking about the typical production lifecycle, here's an example here as a visual. This mindset should be applied to all the different stages because really creative automation is here to benefit every team that's involved in launching a marketing effort. So from when a marketer is first defining a campaign's initial objective and then defining the strategy to support that, all the way through to the creative concepting, to the final asset production, and even that final delivery, All of these steps in this process do work in better harmony when creative automation is being applied. Marketing and creative teams alike are able to remain in total lockstep together to drive the most efficient and successful campaign possible. As Melody mentioned, later we'll dive into some examples of how exactly marketing and creative teams have successfully applied creative automation to their particular workflow. But let's also just start by reviewing the overall benefits of creative automation. When you adopt creative automation, we've seen teams really get a whole suite of benefits. This slide is meant to highlight simply some of them. The most relevant benefits to you really depends on the type of brand you support, your operating model, and ultimately what your business goals or focuses are. So if you're one of the folks who said that they work with a global brand that operates across a number of different local creative agencies, you're likely looking to reduce some of that creative waste, and that's probably super important to you. You want to reduce the duplication of efforts across these markets. If you're someone who works with a more national brand that has maybe a more centralized setup, increased speed to market is very, very important. You may have already worked to do optimizations as far as your operational setup, but you still need that technology to take your production to the next level and really scale it. And if you're a marketer focused on performance, increase creative content or increase creative variety in order to do test and learning strategies much faster, that's likely what resonates with you. But ultimately, all of the benefits you see here, each one is focused on optimizing your production process so that you are able to create more marketing content with less resources, without having to worry about making trade-offs to remain on budget or on time. And that's universal, regardless of your org structure and regardless of your brand or business type. Now I'll kick it back over to Melody to just help explain how it all works.
Yes, thank you, Jackie, for the great introduction in creative automation. In the following section, I'll speak about how this is all going to work together. Creative automation works upon adopting a modular framework that enhances utilization of creative production efforts. It efficiently helps clear process roadblocks in these specific ways. Creative automation helps reduce cold starts for creative tasks, and it also helps marketing teams streamline efforts to make incremental updates. This can be realized by implementing a modular toolkit followed by adaptation workflow. I've mentioned toolkits and adaptation earlier. So what are these really in this context? For the first part, toolkits in a nutshell are reusable templates containing various swappable and non-swappable design components. A toolkit would encapsulate reusable designs and compositions for different sizes, formats, channels, etc. A toolkit contains design concepts that account for swappable components. And what this really means is that production teams can select components that are swappable by our other stakeholders and teams while maintaining certain brand design elements consistent. Modular toolkits use swappable components to enable flexibility and adaptability to support various content versions. And so what do these production and marketing teams do with these swappable components afterwards? They can make adaptations. Different teams can adapt their content based on their brief needs. For example, with a global toolkit for global brands, different markets can translate, copy, and swap up product images or models based on their brief and campaign needs for their audience. Another example would be making refreshes with the same design layouts from the same toolkit for different products as evergreen campaigns go on. Another common use case that we see is for performance marketers to swap a copy for A/B testing purposes, and it can be done very easily. The implementation of toolkits and adaptations is central to successfully leveraging creative automation. At Saltra here, we have over 50 brand clients of different sizes and marketing teams and setups, spanning across global CPG brands, global sports and apparel brands, and other software companies, just to name a few. In the following part, I will be diving deeper into how our clients set up their teams and workflows that tremendously improve their marketing creative production efforts through adopting creative automation technology. We'll start off with what we call centralized production workflow. And in all of the workflows afterwards, you would see the three main steps right here: toolkit production, creative adaptation, and then the launch and delivery of the campaign itself. For clients who set up their creative production in a centralized manner, they do so by having the same creative team doing concepting and production of toolkits. The same team then also adapts the toolkits based on the marketer's requests and delivers those to marketing or media teams respectively. These creative teams could be in-house creative teams consisting of designers, creative operations, or a partner creative agency. So, how do these teams benefit from the help of creative automation under this workflow? It helps them maintain brand consistency and control. Creative teams now are able to maintain and update templates easily without having to update every version that they have previously created. They would also be able to streamline production cycles and have faster turnarounds. With centralized production operations, one team is in charge of most of the creative production work here. Instead of creating net new creatives for each campaign, these teams can make use of adaptations to streamline their production cycles and hence having faster turnarounds. What's crucial for the success of this setup is that alignment and awareness of modularity is key. For marketers, this means that they have to understand the basics of modularity so that they can brief creatives accordingly. And for creative operations teams, this means facilitating proper setup between marketing and production teams to ensure division of labor is clear and requirements are met on both ends. With this workflow specifically, we have seen it work very well with a lot of our clients. In particular, one of our major music streaming platform clients saw around 25 efficiency gain with adopting our creative automation solution.
Next, let's take a look at the adaptation workflow. As Melody mentioned, the same 3 key steps in the workflow remain: the toolkit production, and then the adaptation of that toolkit to create your finalized creatives, and then of course, the delivery and launch. In this workflow, the difference really is the production team is focused on that initial creation of the toolkits. So they will still own and be responsible for building out that overall creative design experience across all the formats, channels, sizes listed on a production brief. They will ensure the proper art direction and brand guidelines are incorporated in that toolkit. The difference comes in the next step with the adaptation of that toolkit. In this workflow, this adaptation is actually being managed by a marketer or another person who doesn't sit necessarily in that immediate creative production team. This way, if there's a simple need to produce net new creatives by swapping in new content into an existing design, a marketer is able to manage this self-serve. Swapping in new pieces of content via a content feed, for example, without touching the toolkit itself, so the core design remains intact. When it comes to launch, the marketer can still hand off these assets to a media team or agency should their workflow have one. Or in many cases, we actually see the marketer is also responsible for the launch of the creatives. So this also helps introduce more efficiencies because now the marketer is able to generate those creative adaptations and have them ready to go to launch, removing the need to have an additional handoff step. So now how do these teams benefit from creative automation? Well, one of the first key benefits is that it's now a lot faster and more efficient to turn around new creatives because now the marketer can directly manage any lower lift creative adaptation requests on their own. This allows the production teams then, the creative teams, to focus more time and effort on higher lift design needs, such as defining new creative strategies or coming up with net new concepts. To ensure this workflow is successful, we've seen that it's very, very key that these 2 teams align on how the toolkits need to be used, especially at the beginning of the production process. The marketers need to very clearly define the requirements as far as what elements, what content do they want to be swappable within that toolkit, so that later on, when they are using that toolkit to create the adaptive creatives, they have the flexibility to swap in new text, for example, to create those adaptations. In return, the production team needs to ensure that they are developing those toolkits to set up and lock in any of that art direction that must remain consistent, while still allowing someone who may not, again, sit on their immediate team easily pick up those toolkits and plug in new content specifically for the pieces of the toolkit that have been marked to be able to be variable or swappable. As Melody mentioned, we've also seen a lot of great results for this workflow with our customers where it makes the most sense, including a national sports betting platform that actually saw over a 42% increase in their production activity. Also, an increase in their production team's ability to service design requests from other internal stakeholders.
Thank you, Jackie, so much for introducing the marketer adaptation workflow. Now we'll go to our biggest one right here, which is what we coined the global to local workflow. In my experience and research working a lot with enterprise level global clients, I have seen them set up teams in the following ways. They would usually have a creative team or production team, like a creative agency that works with the global or headquarter brand stakeholders that produces the toolkits. These toolkits are then handed over to different regions or business units' local markets. Local brand managers would then brief their partner agencies to adapt these global toolkits, sometimes translating copy or sometimes even producing bespoke size and formats for their own audience needs from the template available in the toolkit. And then afterwards, it would get handed over to media teams for launch and delivery. So how do these global clients benefit from creative automation? With producing global toolkits, global brands can ensure all the investment that they've put into the brand's identity and creative elements are trickling down to each market. By putting guardrails on what creative components are swappable inside the toolkits, global brand managers won't need to worry about their local market adaptations going off brand. With the myriad of approved toolkits, local brand managers are also able to efficiently select the templates applicable to their campaign needs and create more versions of a creative to test out different content, like for imagery or like just changing out different copies, CDAs, etc., and create more personalized content without redoing any design work, hence saving cost as well as enhancing efficiency on creative production. To ensure this workflow is successful, we've seen that the clear definition of processes for different stakeholders and parties is extremely helpful. Defining best practices around naming conventions, as well as internal toolkit handoff processes, has helped these brands ensure smooth adaptations across local markets and their partnering agencies. Across our global clients, including some CPG brands and some other major sports and apparel brands, we've seen on average 380 toolkits getting adapted per year. With the help of creative automation and the setup we've mentioned above, we've conducted case studies where we see significant improvements on different aspects of our clients' creative production efforts. With Adidas in particular, we saw 60% reduced in production efforts for each new market. With Shopify, we saw 45x faster time to market. And with P&G, we saw 70% lower trans creation cost. We've heard all about creative automation and some optimal team setups and workflow processes. Here's a quick recap on how creative automation can level up your marketing team's game. First, you would be able to reduce unnecessary repetition, saving you time and money to invest elsewhere, for example, into new campaign strategy or servicing more internal teams. Your teams would also be able to produce better and consistent creative results faster. You might be thinking now then, adopting creative automation seems like such a no-brainer, right? But how do you even get started? For the last section of this webinar, where we'll be speaking, we're not going to talk more about how great creative automation is and all that stuff. Instead, we have a few action items for you to take home for your team. First, you can identify repetition. Find areas along your current workflow and processes that there's repeated creative work being done. Afterwards, you can identify and map out who and which teams are performing those actions. The next thing you can do is, based on the introduction we have on different workflows today and the successes we have learned from our clients, you can try to find a model that would best fit for you. Identify your current production operating model within your org and feel free to start conversations to discuss how responsibilities and resources can then be enhanced and evolved to support these optimal collaboration processes. And with that, that's the end of our presentation part. Feel free to reach out to me and Jackie via LinkedIn or visit salsha.com/get-started. We'll leave this page up for a moment, and thank you so much, everybody, for your time, and we'll pass it over to George as well.
Absolutely. Well, Melody and Jackie, thanks for the great presentation. So how long does it typically take for a team to adopt modular design strategies?
So this depends on the size and spread of your team. Especially with larger teams, it may take a bit more time to transition all stakeholders from modular design practices to become second nature in the team. However, we do see that if you have piloted with a specific team and reached success first, it is a lot easier to then have other stakeholders also get involved. And that's usually how our setup goes as well. What's more important here is also for end users and anybody else who's involved to understand the benefits of this new way of working, right? Like there are so many different stakeholders and sort of personas involved in this process. Everybody needs to be on board, and they all have different values that they can get out of creative automation. And once in motion, you can figure out more automation opportunities and build that momentum and excitement up within within your org and create more scale and have better creative excellence in scaling across the marketing efforts in business.
Nice. Melissa actually asked in the Q&A, how many different content formats can you create with the platform?
So if you're talking about formats in terms of like image, video, HTML, we support all of that, if that's helpful. Yes. Statics, videos, HTML. There you go.
Love it. Jackie, any additions to like the previous question, or we're good to go?
Yeah, I think I would just note, kind of building on what Melody is saying, it may feel really daunting, right? Change management can be very difficult, especially if you're in a larger organization. So to Melody's point, something we're often working with our customers on is this idea of crawl, walk, run. So find out, what is your initial phase? What are those initial pain points and teams feeling that? And start a pilot process there with the long-term journey of saying, okay, where do we want to be in, let's say, 6 months or a year? So it doesn't need to feel too daunting as long as you're kind of thinking and breaking it up that way.
Nice. Very good. Who in my company do you recommend speaking to first when implementing a solution like that we've talked about today?
I think the first is definitely the peers within your leadership, and see if they're feeling the same pains and also these points of inefficiencies that you are realizing, right? This is a collaborative creative automation mindset. Shouldn't just come from one person, but it is a collective effort to identify what needs to be solved. And very likely what you're going to see is that different teams have like a marketer team and a production team would have different pain points over, and our platform can help solve for different people essentially. So start with your peers in leadership, and then you can sort of go laterally as well.
Yeah, you'll probably be surprised. Some of the pains you're feeling are, I'm sure, being felt by other teams. And we do see this all the time as well when we're working with these customers. It's really about, again, this mindset is focused on collaboration. So having that dialogue and that conversation, especially between your marketing stakeholders and those creative stakeholders.
Nice. Love it. All right. We outsource our creative work. Can we still reap benefits from a creative automation engine?
Definitely. We have a lot of experience implementing this across all sorts of organizations. You already see like 3 different types of workflows, and we have over 50 brand clients, as we mentioned, whether it's centralized teams like an in-house creative production team, or like creative agencies, media teams, etc. Communication is really the key here. That is the key to success here, whether it's internally within the organization, like your creative operations speaking to marketing teams, or like your creative team speaking to agencies, etc. And we, like, everybody has to agree and be on the same marketing train with the same common goal of like enhancing marketing efforts. So whether they're pitching a media plan or giving a creative direction, fulfilling the production part, or doing trafficking, these teams should all be a part of this creative automation mindset, and also open to collaboration in all parts of the processes. And we see the most success in teams that are able to reach this.
Absolutely. And something we also want to stress is that it's not that one size will fit all, right? If you are a different organization, a different brand setup, you're likely dealing with different stakeholders. But as long as there is this kind of group mentality of the collaboration and this communication and this mutual understanding that you are all after some type of efficiencies or improvement, this is where we've seen the success across these different models.
All right. So we'll flip a coin. Heads. Melody, you won. You didn't even count heads. What would be the hashtag one thing from today's presentation that you would hope the audience would take away?
Yes, for me, definitely is that no matter what size the marketing team you're at, creative automation would still benefit you. Like, we have the experience of serving all these different setups, onboarding all these different clients. And as long as you have the repetition, you have the issues, like, creative automation will be able to be valuable for you and your marketing team and everybody else that the marketing team works with.
Love it. And Jackie, your hashtag one thing?
Yeah, I think, Melody, you hit on part of it. I think for me, it's, again, think about the repetitive tasks you're doing. Think about, where are you spending the most time, but feeling like you're maybe delivering not as much value as you could. That is a great place to start when you can now then understand how creative automation could come into play. So what is that repetition? What is those opportunities where you're just simply feeling like you're spending too much time when you could be spending that time more efficiently elsewhere?
Very nice. Thank you, Melody and Jackie, again for an amazing presentation. And thanks again to Celtra for sponsoring today's presentation. Attendees, thanks for joining today. We'll see you again real soon in the next Marketing Profs event. But between now and then, remember to be a happy, helpful, humble B2B marketing human and keep getting 1% better at your craft each and every day. Great job, ladies.
Thanks for joining.